Scaling up, Kevin. How do we do that?
Scaling up. All right, that's what I wanted to get onto as well, because you asked a lot of important questions last episode and the one before, but there's a part of the design in our system which is a safety net for people coming into a band reality, leaving their education, doing a bit of junior training, and then either starting a band or joining a band. So that's what should have come first before asking, how do we make money? How do we make money for the band? We already have a system that's the other way around, because there's like 3 decades of research gone into this about what's wrong with the world and how rotten it is and how parasitic everything is with capitalism. We tried to address that at the root, where we could have a chance of bringing community back by reversing the whole what we've done wrong. And so in the scaling process of a band, we want to do it quick and effective so we can mobilize trained caretakers all over the planet to start addressing ecosystem problems. But at the local micro level, it needs to be realistic on the ground so that we become a natural community and the economy slowly does lift and all the practicalities actually happen. So we're looking at exponential numbers again, like cellular growth, as fast as possible, but as safely predictable as possible. So I'm using myself as the best example in the video diary, starting right at the beginning, like I was trying to say in the beginning, but I didn't really articulate it too well. Starting with me, my aim is I need someone else here to help me speed things up, to be the next person in the band, but they have to be certificated. So from 1 to 2, I'm looking straight away at my partner, Sarah. And up until now, she hasn't even been living on site, just temporarily visiting, but she had a house in another village. And so only this weekend, she's released that house and she's actually stepping into the system as senior caretaker number 2 officially. And so we have a chance here to show the whole system building a band. And so from 2, there's 3 things to think about before scaling, before you even invite someone into a band. And these 3 things have to be developed parallel as part of the daily and weekly lifestyle of the caretakers who are already in a band. So one of them is the actual relations themselves, getting to know that you've actually met the right person that you want in your community. So there's a very real side there of growing natural relations. And so if it's me and Sarah, it's like going 2 to 4, we need to get into this flow of opening the right discussions with somebody that we care about. And in this case, we identified you 2 as the next most likely. And so here we are. So that's the first thing, relations. But the second thing is the legalities of your site. If you've been granted land to start a band by Medicine Ways, there's a few very minimalistic things that need to be in place by law before we can have any number of people on that site legally living there. And so we don't want to come into conflict with the old system. And we've already negotiated for years till we found the happy medium for our regenerative design things for grey water and toilets and things like that. So like we were talking about previously, we're already on that bit as well, scaling up the infrastructure in preparation of doubling your numbers. So it's already done. All these things are in place before another senior caretaker steps even on site. Everyone lands comfortably and it's already set up. And the third thing, just as important, is economics. So we designed our own social economy system here because it's legal for non-profit organizations to have an income generating project going. And if it involves people living at a site to run a certain project or service for a non-profit ideal, you can still take care of the accommodation, clothing, food, transport, all these things associated with having to live a life to do that job within the organization. So we want to use that to the maximum first. And this is where we use it at this point in the process where we want to scale up a band. So you could either be leaving your junior training and being an individual like me and starting right at the beginning to try and plot a course to scale up your band at the same time as we're trying to fix a land base for you to do that on. Or you could be taking one of the offers of a band that already exists, like the Midgård band. But if an offer has been made already, then it means that for 3 months stable, the senior caretakers who came before you, who are making the offer, they have already been working in your behalf unbeknown to you, we've already had long discussions about the values of who's coming in and when, and then we get to work scaling up the infrastructure and the economy. And we have a strategy then that we want to teach out for people in future to try and follow, because it keeps the economy stable as well when you're going through this transition. And that is to keep the baseline spending still at the same low level as you were for 3 months in a row, but you're trying to raise your income to double within the band using the same services that you're already succeeding with, and not spending that extra for 3 months in a row to be sure you can maintain that new level 3 months in a row. And that's kind of the new reality of the band then economically. And then you can step into the person you're trying to welcome into the band and saying, right, we're there. We have your food covered. We have a private accommodation set up, even if it's a temporary situation until something's built. Yeah. But all the basics, all the fundamentals for life and comfort within the band basically is already in place. Then we get to the person moving in and getting comfortable for a few months, just feeling out what the routines are. And during that time, we'll have the discussions about, where are we going economically with this? And what you're asking first, how do we generate more income in a regenerative and ethical way from the ground up, basically? But we do it together then, each step of the way. Like I said, there's no power hierarchy. So there's just a bit of a competence hierarchy until people level up.
Which is justified.
Yes, that's what we've seen through evidence of trying all the different ways in the past. And there's so many things can go wrong with charitable, non-profit, purely non-profit idealism. And I guess I've been one of the worst. I've really tried for 20 years to do things very, very ideal, and it gets a bit utopian at times, and it just fallen flat on my face with that one. It's just come back and bit me on the ass so many times. So we needed structure. We needed to take this seriously, and it's people's real input and energy and money we're talking about. So we want it to be tight and secure, and so we want to take it in a mature way. This real attempt. And another thing we realized was some people are going to choose immediately to do the APSO together as friends or family, and come out the other end as with a group already enough to start a band. So they could take it from that midway position and run with it. Yeah. Or you could be coming out of APSO and be the only one. You don't know anybody yet. And you could use all the platforms and forums online to meet people in the Caretaker network and get to know them. Maybe start meeting in real time and talking real things. So that's kind of the slowest way of building a band, from being like in my position, one person. But in my case, I've got 8 people in mind that I know I have to include in this. So it's really just the other 2 elements. It's the legal infrastructure, regenerative grey water restoration and compost toilets. And it's the economy to make sure everybody lands softly. Sure. And there's no stress on anybody then from the moment we double up. And because we're using the exponential curve, we don't have to panic about growth in the world and trying to get this system out there. We just have to live it following this gentle first curve within our own band. Meanwhile, this Babble from the Bubble thing is aiming to try and plant the seed worldwide to mirror this and use our system. And because it's already in place, all the elements to make it work.
Sticking to that exponential curve, what happens after 4?
Yeah, this is interesting. In the advanced economic model, a couple of interesting things happen to make this even more doable as we enter into the curve, because the costs from the first 2 going to 4, the costs of a site don't double, even though the people double. And when it comes to having pre-existing...
Sorry, when you say the cost of a site, do you mean to manage the site or to purchase a site?
No, what this is, it's after Medicine Waste has already provided a site for a band to set up on its first site. And it is the first cost you're going to have if you want to get started with electricity, water, as it is, as you find the site. It might be an old degraded farm. It might have electricity or water. It might not. These are going to be in different states that we find them in. But we'll buy them. We'll put them out there as the system grows for people to have a look at. And each one will have its own baseline cost of running the project there to exist there. So everybody has equal access to water, electricity, the land's funded completely. And there's things like also in the legal system, like waste collection, at least once a month.
Sure.
And even though we're aiming for zero waste in our community design,
that would
later,
be minimum, yes.
Yeah, but to begin with, again, zero conflict with the existing system. We understand there is a cost anyway by staying on grid. It's good that somebody's taking care of that for us. But we know how to do better to move towards off grid. And when we do, all of those baseline costs get wiped out along the way. And that can only happen really when the band's grown a bit and there's more people active in the regenerative income streams, doing those 25 hours a week to help the whole develop. So it's a good system. It's very reciprocity. There's much reciprocity calculated into it. I can't say that word.
It's a hard one.
Yeah, it is a hard one. It's a hard one to do as well. We've noticed.
So the cost of the land does not increase, although the number of people does.
No, yeah, it's the monthly cost utility bills basically we're talking about. So when you double the number of people in the band using the site, it's not automatic. All those costs double up. Like electricity, for example, half of the cost you're paying for the net hire, all the equipment and the service, and then there's only half of it is the actual consumption of the electricity. But we've seen in the past that when you have double that or triple that on site, it doesn't mean the electricity is doubling or tripling in our use. So it doesn't reflect exactly that it gets, wow, suddenly double so more expensive. And it's the same right across the spectrum, really, about all the things we're paying in the baseline category of running a site. We could go from 2 to 4, and the costs may only go up to 1/3, basically.
Yeah.
But we aim in every case to double the income anyway. And like we said, the strategy is 3 months in a row before we know it's serious, before we make the serious offer that, yes, everything's balanced and ready. And I think we have it. I think we have the system there to catch people as they land into a band system, or through a series of regenerative careers and advanced training and even further education courses people can do online as people pick their specialist niches. We have a whole range of courses we can point people in the right direction if they want to become expert in their field.
And why 3 months?
That was something we've played with here on this site just over the years, to see what provides a safe economy for a group activity, basically a long-term group situation. And we've seen when we haven't done that, when we haven't buffered up in any way and tried to use all the income we have for the maximum use of moving the project forward each month, leaving ourselves with zero at the end of every month. But then there's some unexpected thing come while we're still on grid, an extra cost, our prices have gone up, and it catches us unawares, and it causes a little flutter of crisis, basically. People who get worried and anxious easy by these things. So we decided to wipe that worry out as well by just thinking a few months in advance when you're about to scale up. It's like, okay, let's take this seriously. Let's really prepare the way for these new people.
And what happens, briefly, what happens within these 3 months?
We basically
on both sides.
Just from us who are here, for example, if it's me and Sarah, we sit and discuss daily how we're going to market more our services in return for sponsorship and donations. So we aim, there's an average, what I've worked this out at, it's like 10,000 per person. I believe through decades of ideal work and fundraising and charity work that very easily every single person who's serious in something like this, they can in a month manage to come up with ideas to fundraise 10,000 krona. It's a very realistic sum. And so I let that be the only number I worked to when I was designing the economic model. I thought, okay, let's say that's your only income then. And people have done their best, and that's what they can get into the collective to support the whole idea. And I played around with what that money was worth in different gears of systems and things to see what we could do with that. And if it was enough to really get something moving regeneratively, which reflected in the economy later on a bigger and bigger scale. And it worked. It really worked. And that's what I based the 25 hours a week on. It's basically, we can give a universal value for people's time in the system. So they can come into the system even without money. They can be right off the street poor and in debt. and we can still take them safely into the system, because their time is worth the same as everybody else's. We level it at 100 krona per hour in our thinking. And those people who are putting 25 hours a week, in my mind, right from the beginning, are contributing a potential 2,500 kroner a week, which is 10,000 a month. And that's them clear. They've taken responsibilities for their community economically. And I think at that point, they deserve the right for the community to give them everything they need to survive. That's my basic concept I've been trying to mold for like 34 years. And I think we finally got there, and that's the excitement now. That's why we're having these discussions now, is I think we have a really safe system to offer to people. And that's the dynamic that makes it possible, I think, that social economy in our band system, because we're always ahead of the game. We know where we're going. We know the amount of people we want to welcome into our community. We take the time to select them, so it is a real, genuine connection with each band that forms. And after all of this, after a band is developed, which I say is like a maximum of 32 in this system, because I'm trying to design a professional team for each bioregion at the same time. But I think we can go further in the exponential thinking of spreading this system. I think a band, when it's reached maturity, can actually sponsor the birth and development of 3 other bands in the same country in different bioregions, and be there for them, basically, and just be the passive example that they can always turn to, or even engage economically actively with projects with common goals and really support their growth. Like it's exactly what the trees and the fungi do in the forest between other trees. They're
There's a whole
leveling up
system of sponsoring.
Yeah, it becomes like the forest basically, and the mycelium evening out the resources so that the young and the sick trees even get fed in the shady areas. But hopefully there won't be too many shady areas. But yeah, it goes on. That's what I mean. It feels fractal. What I said in the beginning when we started talking, it feels like it has no limits. It can keep going fractally, repeating the same common core patterns and safety nets. And there'll always be somebody ahead who is getting more and more competent and knowledgeable, who's been rooted longer to a piece of land and who's living the life and can answer any questions and be the example.
So there's constant
there's
movement.
no weirdness. There's no... Sorry?
There is constant movement in that system. There is never pause, a break.
No, it's kind of like we're opening up channels for a natural flow of energy to come through, and everybody gets what they need out of that flow. And anything that's like left over kind of cycles back into the system and comes back through again, basically. It accumulates at some point to come back through. So we don't lose anything outwards to any bad guys or any corrupt entities or institutions or any offshore bank accounts. I think everything's there when we need it. Then once you boot that into being, into this system, into life. And that's what we're aiming to do.